Right.
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I would like to begin this talk with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Today, I have the honor and privilege of being joined by my brother, Bashir Mark, who is going to do a talk on Taqwa and basically the 7 members of the body and the God consciousness, and how in these trying times that we're living in today, why knowing these subjects and not only knowing them, but implementing them to our lives is very pivotal in our spiritual growth. So without further ado, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our brother Bashir Mark, and please take it away.
Wa alaikum salam. Brother Salman, thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum to all. I'm going to start off by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim as we continue this new discussion of calling Taqwa. So what is Taqwa? Taqwa is the being conscious and cognizant of God. Knowledge and aware of God is also known as the piety and fear of Allah. Ibn Abbas says that those who practice taqwa are believers who avoid shirk with Allah and who works in his obedience. And he also called this as the muttaqin. This is important in our trying times because we are living in a world of chaos right now. And the best way of obtaining this God consciousness is in being aware of Allah, is preserving the members of the body. There are 7 members of the body that needs to be preserved. Each of these members of the body actually could be a lecture itself, but I'm just giving the simple overall practice that anyone can do today into following God conscious regarding, where, you could follow in following the right path into being closer to Allah. And the 7 members of the bodies are the eyes, the ears, the tongues, the hand, the stomach, the private parts, and the feet. And we'll start with the eyes. The first thing is the eyes. We should avoid avoid making eye contact with the opposite sex is a very hard these days for a lot of people, especially those who are single. But avoiding eye contact of the opposite sex actually helps obtain taqwa, because sometimes you can undress that person just by looking at that person. So you could undress that person, have an imagination of what that person looks like underneath their clothing. So this is something that we should avoid, eye contact of the opposite sex, just to avoid that kind of thinking. When we look at something without jealousy and then envy, that's very important. And to do that, we always say we give praise to that object or person. So if a person is doing well, and you see a picture of a person doing well, family, we always say, and we always give a praise. And in Islam, we say it, mashallah. And we should avoid looking at something that is provocative. So we don't want to look at something that is provocative. We want to avoid as possible. These ads these days are very provocative. So that's why we should do our best to avoid these ads as much as possible. Ears is the second member of the body. We should avoid listening to gossip, backbiting, mockery, lies, and slander. Well, the same thing should be told, which is the next one, which is the tongue. But before we go to the tongue, we should avoid listening to other people, hearing about rumors about other people. We should avoid all those kind of things because that could come back and hurt. So we want to avoid as much as listening to rumors, listening to things being said about other people. And our best way to do it is correct them. We don't personally attack them back, because that's would be the next one, which is the tongue. But we should correct them and saying that they should not be doing this, which leads to the next member of the body, which is the tongue. We should once again avoid the lying, the backbiting, the gossip, argument, on speaking on matters that does not pertain to you. Minding your own business is an issue that a lot of people have. Some people can't mind their own business. It's they want to get involved. No. You should avoid that as much as possible. You should avoid arguments as much as possible. Find a solution, compromise. Avoid arguments, because arguments lead to worse things. We're seeing that a lot today, where a simple argument leads to something more worse than that simple argument. We're seeing that a lot these days in the news over something simple. Find a solution to that argument instead of letting that argue, and then it goes into something that's much more worse, which leads to hands. We should avoid committing wrong actions, sow corruptions on earth, stealing, causing unnecessary harms to others. So we should, leading from going back to the argument, that leads to the hands, which in turns that, with hands, we could commit wrong actions through, from that argument, you could commit murder, you could commit stealing, you commit some other kind of things that can happen with that. From that, it's stemming from that argument. So that's why we should avoid the argument in the first place, so we can avoid them committing the wrong things further. Chain reaction, and that's what happens. And we see corruptions. We see a lot of corruption these days as well. So we try to avoid corruption. The corruption with money, greed. That's a big one that we are seeing in this world today. So these are some things that, to obtain God's strength, we should avoid all these things to try to stay on the path of being closer to Allah. The next one is the stomach. We should avoid foods that are not permissible, and foods that are harmful to us. In Islam, it's pork. We should avoid eating pork products. In some religions, they avoid other things, but we should avoid foods that are not permissible, and we should avoid excessive eating. Excessive eating happens a lot. Our society today is obese, and we need to avoid, find ways of excessive eating and trying to find ways that we could eat properly. There was a report about this, the food desert and the food swamp in America. And the food swamp is we have an overload of fast food restaurants and unhealthy things. And the food desert is that we have a scarcity of food. So we don't have like a bit in between. We either have a lot or a little. That's what we're seeing in America. So we need to, our society, we need to find solutions into finding ways that people are being fed, finding ways that we could eat properly and healthy, so that we could be righteous in that sense. We should always avoid gluttony as best as possible. The private parts, we should avoid being alone with the opposite sex not related to you. We shouldn't be seeing other people in private. We should see people in public, but we should try to avoid seeing the opposite sex not related to you. We should avoid wearing clothing that is revealing. We should be dressing modesty, and we should avoid places of temptation. That is, areas that we struggle in our society, struggles with a lot is this. We see a lot of exploitations in Hollywood. We see a lot of exploitations in TV, regular TV shows, and so forth. So this is something that we need to avoid as best as possible. And lastly, we should avoid with the feet, the protection of the feet. We should avoid placing situations that are prohibited. We should not go places where we don't belong. We should avoid places where that bad things can happen. So we should try to do our best and not go to those places. Instead, we should go to places that are good. Going to a place of worship, going to a house where people could learn, instead of partying or having a gather that is that's suitable in a situation that doesn't promote bad habits. So those are something that we should avoid. The places that promote bad habits, places that could give us dangerous situations. The best, of course, the best three options that always give us the taqwa is prayer, zikr, and fasting. These are the three recommendations that always have been helpful into avoiding a lot of these temptations, and to preserve the members of the body. Brother Salman.
Hey, Brian, that's absolutely wonderful, my brother. I think you definitely nailed it to an extent that we need to know these things very much in this society, and in a place where everything is kind of telling you to eat more, spend time with people who don't mean anything to you, and to do all of these things which are not healthy to the human soul. And as much as this society promotes freedom and individualism, look at how they're suffering. I don't see any of them that have any kind of peace in their lives. And I think what you pointed out here in the Western world, this would probably serve them, and it's for their greatest good if they are willing to listen to what the wisdom that you have offered them. I thank you, my brother, and just this is absolutely invaluable wisdom in today's times.
You're welcome, Brother Salman. This is a troubling time because just by looking at just by looking around, it's like our society is walking like zombies, and
Yeah, they are. They are.
we need to shed light, and these is one of the ways. How to obtain light is doing these simple things, is following the path of righteousness instead of the wrongness. And this is one way you could find this, is by doing the simple little things here that I just mentioned,
Yes.
just to help them to be on the path. But each, like I said, each of these members is a lecture itself. There's an inner teaching for each of those, and that itself is a lecture. So each of those members is a lecture. It's by itself, like I said, and that I could leave my contact information if anybody is interested in learning more about how those members of the body could be further explored into practicing taqwa.
Sure, absolutely. I will leave your email and contact info in the description below. So for those that are interested in following up on that concept, they can surely do so.
Absolutely.
So is there anything else, my brother? Any closing thoughts, or does that wrap it up?
One closing thought is that we always keep in prayers for all those who are suffering in this world, from mental illness, from poverty, from just the people who are struggling in general. We always keep those in our prayers. I know you always do too. Just want to let everyone know that we are praying for all those people in our society who need
Yes,
help, who are struggling, and who
indeed,
need the light
indeed.
in their path. So may God continue to bless all of them, and that could also lead to the path of righteousness.
I mean, my brother, I mean. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you were able to benefit from this conversation in some way. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum.